Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Our special guest today is Dr. Dominique Leveille.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So, you went to school locally, all right?
Yes.
Nova. You have your doctorate in
family therapy at Nova Southeastern. Yeah.
Do they call you doctor?
Who? Others call me doctor, my clients, but family members still call me by my childhood nickname. That doesn't change.
So you're a licensed mental health therapist.
Yes, I am.
Is there a particular angle that you like to have? Would you rather have families or individuals or children?
I like to have couples. I like to have the couples because I feel like mom and dad are usually the ones that are taking the lead in the household. So I always feel that if the couples are on the same page, usually the kids will follow suit. But if the couples are not on the same page, that's when you usually see some behavioral problems with the kids because they're just trying to cope with it.
So often people, when they go into a career, there was something that drove them many years before.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm not talking about 5 years ago, but many years ago. So what was your motivation?
Being young in my family, everyone always would come to me with their problems. How do I handle this? What do I do with this? Or sometimes they'll just come to me to vent. My brothers would do that a lot. They would come in my room and I just got so used to it that I looked for a profession that allowed me to become the best at it. Because I started to notice that it's a gift to be able to listen to someone vent and not place any judgment and actually give them non-biased ideas or where to go get the answer. So I felt like since that's my gift, God gave me my gift, let me find an education that connects my gift to academics. So then now I can have the doctor. So when I say something, people could say, oh yeah, she knows what she's talking about. I can trust her.
And what age did you recognize that?
I think I was 17. When I was 17, I recognized that more of my family members were coming to me. And then when I was a teacher, I found that my students loved to have lunch with me. And most students don't want to spend time with their teacher. I was the English teacher, not the favorite teacher, but they would want to spend time with me and they would tell me about their experiences at home. And I would just talk to them about it. And more students would continuously come to my classroom. And then I lost my brother. And I noticed family did the same. They started relying on me to help them through that loss. So then I was like, okay, I got to go to school for this. I got to make this a reality. God is giving me too many examples.
And so often when we look at athletes or singers, you go, well, they got it.
Yeah.
And they recognize it early on.
Yes.
And when we look at Michael Jackson when he was this big, you go, he's either going to be a minister or a singer. And the answer, one of those two, he's going to be good at it.
Yep.
And so, and looking farther back from the 17, it's at some point when you were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, what was your drive to get to this point to where you could be self-actualized?
It was my grandmother, my mother. They were very powerful individuals in my life. My grandmother was a teacher in Miami-Dade County, so education was always really, really important for her. And my mom was always a go-getter, and everyone would go to my mother. My mother is the first lady of a church, so everyone would go to her, seek her guidance and understanding through difficulties. So I noticed that everyone would go to my mom and my cousins would come to me. And so I was like, am I kind of my mom? But of course, the rebellion in me, I was like, no, I'm going to be a teacher. I don't want to fall into this. And then being a teacher, I felt like it was still coming to me. People were still seeking my assistance. So
you were a teacher and then you decided to go get another terminal degree.
Yes. So while I was a teacher, I got my master's and my doctorate. Because I enjoy being a teacher. I loved working with the kids. It was such a passion of mine. And I love teaching them, especially English. It's such a difficult area for kids to enjoy because it challenges them. They have to read it, they have to comprehend it, and then they have to answer a question that's coming from, they don't even understand the question sometimes. So working with the kids, I loved it. I love that kind of one-on-one, but I also could see how their mental health was stopping them sometimes from truly being able to connect to the academics. So that's what pushed me to get my master's. And being in the master's, I still would question my professors, like, what about this? What about this? And finally, one of them, Dr. Rambo, was like, come to the doctorate level, you'll understand. And I was like, okay, I'll do that.
Any hesitation?
No, I always knew I wanted to be an expert in understanding human behavior. I did.
So at some point you said, I'm going to open my own practice.
Yes.
And you named the practice. Tell us about the naming of the practice.
Okay.
Why you called it what
Bliss,
you do.
yes. So opening up the practice was something I've always wanted to do. But of course, my idea was on just going back to work at Nova, becoming an adjunct professor. But my husband knew that the mental health was calling me a little bit more. So he pushed for the practice more than me. And Bliss Therapy came from the BlissTherapy.me comes from the idea of bliss, the feeling truly, genuinely happy, not with the material, not with someone else, but truly, genuinely happy from the inside. And that comes through therapy. And then the .me is because it centers around you. It's a moment that's just about you and about your connection with your inner self. So that's how the name came, BlissTherapy.me.
Okay, I think we're going to have your website address that's going to come across there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an old saying, it's all about me, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've been, your practice is in Palmetto Bay.
Yep, it's in Palmetto Bay. It's been there for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was virtual during the pandemic. I left teaching, which was a very hard decision to leave, but I just felt like I needed to switch into the mental health. So I became a full-time licensed mental health therapist in the Palmetto Bay.
And not so many years passed. If somebody had an emotional problem, it was like, keep them in the background.
Yes.
Don't talk about it. And if you were a guy, I suggested it was probably worse and harder on that to bring forth. I've got a broken heart, a broken soul, versus I have a broken hand, and we can celebrate that.
Yeah.
But it seems to me it's been getting front and center a whole lot more.
Yes, because more people have understood that mental health it deals with our brain. Our brain is what controls our body. It controls our action. And for some, like for all of us, it controls all of our organs. So if we don't focus on the brain and give it what it needs to be healthy, how are we truly knowing that we're behaving or reacting in our true, genuine self? So that's why I feel like mental health has been pushed more, and there's been more of an understanding, especially the pandemic as well.
So we know a lot of people are still having challenges because of the pandemic.
Yes.
And when we think about the little kids, the pandemic essentially was a huge part of their life.
Yes, it was.
For us, over the age of 40, it was a couple percent.
Right. It was a time period, but for them, it was their life.
Yes. And we remember what it was like. All they would see was this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when patients come to you and they talk about the pandemic,
mm-hmm.
and how do we go from remembering that to a place where it's a little bit healthier?
It's reminding ourselves of trust. During the pandemic, what happened is we lost trust in each other. We lost the idea of, I can trust you, you're going to be honest with me, I'm going to be honest with you. So it's teaching them how to trust others again. And it's trusting the notion of everyone, there's good in everyone. We can't just focus on the bad, or we can't think that they're going to bring something to us. So is reminding them of the pleasures that they had prior to the mask, prior to the pandemic, of how did it feel when you would go to the beach and hang out with friends and you would see people? How was that for you? We didn't feel anything. Or how was it attending a concert and all of us connecting on the fact that we enjoy this music and we love it so much that we're all here. So it's just reminding them and rebuilding that trust that was lost because of the mask.
It certainly brought forth and front and center about how we feel about each other and what we can expect from each other. We know that people responded to masks differently.
Yes.
And some were a little carefree and some were careless.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then on the other hand, you have people that were totally isolated.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're very afraid.
And have everything in between.
Yes.
One of the things that we recognize as our responsibility here is we had a glass, big glass wall here, another one here, and we knew it was time to help people stay together. So we did shows constantly.
Good.
And because we knew that there's some people that were sitting at home twiddling their thumbs.
Yes.
And it was really a pleasure to do that. We had no COVID here for 2 years, and then when the strain came through, that was it.
That was it. Yeah.
It went all the way through.
Yep.
But we understand about that mistrust that was there.
Yes.
And we still have curtain rods hanging overhead, not just in case, but in the other room I still have the glass over here. wondering, is it going to come back again?
Right.
And what does it mean?
That's the PTSD. That's the fear. That's the fear of us having to go through that again, going through that experience. So, and that's because the trust, right? So most important thing is for us to focus on trusting each other and trusting that we have the tools that it takes to overcome it. A lot of us felt that the trust was taken away. We didn't know what to expect and forgot that we can rely on ourselves. We've all been through, yes, different traumas, but we've come out them differently, right? We've overcome them differently or in the process of overcoming it. So it's just reminding ourselves that we do have the strength to do it and we can connect with each other. It's okay.
And speaking of trust, so Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, years ago, he went on TV and he was a big advocate for telehealth.
Yes.
He says, when I have a problem, this is it. And I went, maybe this is going to help. Here's this big, strong guy. And you know what? That did help.
It did.
And then we know that October is World Mental Health Month. And now with their mental health days, which is really tremendous.
Which is amazing. You have certain schools that give their students a mental health day off if they know that there was some trauma or if they lost a family member around the month. So there has been more emphasis on understanding individuals' mental health and how do we navigate and protect them.
And frequently at your physical doctor, when you go to your doctor, that's your mental health doctor, they ask you, how are you doing? And and then there's a ranking.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that has changed. I feel like when I used to go, there used to be a question and everyone would kind of fill it in and the doctor would be like, oh, stress is stress, make sure you're doing something. But now it's like, okay, I noticed you got this. Have you consulted with a therapist? There's more emphasis on it because even medical doctors are noticing how the mental health can affect the body as well, right? Because if we believe we're not going to feel better, that can stop us from feeling better.
So we work closely with NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. So Susan Rachel was the volunteer president for a long time. So her son had an episode about 10 years ago. Susan sitting right here. She said, I'd like my son to come in. He wants to sing a song. So Matt came in, who now has his master's and working in the field.
Wonderful.
And so he sat right next to you with his guitar and he sang, "You're Not Alone." The mother's crying, I'm crying. And I'm imagining him walking on Biscayne Boulevard with no shoes and no shirt.
Yes.
And we know that mental illness and ill mental health is everywhere.
Yes.
How can we as parents and as friends, help somebody and how do we talk to them and ask them questions about how they're doing without getting out of our lane, if you will?
I think it's the proximity, right? When we ask people questions and they're very personal, it's good to ensure that you're in a safe space, that maybe there's been other conversations surrounding mental health that's maybe been talked about. So the topic isn't coming out of nowhere. They have an idea that you're coming from this sincere place and they don't have to be worried, right? So proximity is very important. And it's also building trust. How close are you to this friend, right? Are you close enough to say, hey, I noticed that lately your behavior has been a bit off? Is stress at work, something at home? Or are you close enough to say, hey, I was interviewing this amazing therapist and she had some really good ideas. Do you think you would want one? So it all depends on your relationship, how you're going to open the question and open that door, because mental health is still something that's very, very sensitive for most, but it's something that's needed by all. So we just want to be mindful of that when we're addressing it, that we're coming from a very sensitive place and not more of a, I can see something's wrong and you need to fix it. That's never a good place to be.
So are there certain techniques you use when you're talking with people to help them get more comfortable? Can you tell us about some of those?
Yes. So I do a lot of like the mirroring where I will mirror their breathing. If they're sitting a certain way, I might sit similar. Certain word choices that they use, I may mirror that word choice. And I just act curious. I'm just a very curious person. I never act as if I know, even if I'm with a Haitian American client, I'm not assuming that I know their reality just because I'm also a Haitian American. I'm very curious. I ask them questions because everyone is different. I believe we're similar to our DNAs. We're individuals. So I'm not going to assume. So I stay in that, just very curious, soft-spoken, one-on-one. You'll see I give a lot of eye contact just to ensure that I'm engaging with you.
Because maybe they might think you're a little presumptuous.
Yes.
Because you both have green hair.
Yep.
You're both tall or whatever it happens to be.
Exactly. Or because I'm a doctor. So in my office, I don't have the traditional desk that I sit behind. It's more of a couch. It looks like a living room that you kind of just like sit. I have a couch, I have candy, I have coloring books. So it's very much like relaxed and not a sense of like you're coming into something that's dangerous.
In the older days, therapists, whether it was with master's or PhD or MD, typically didn't promote themselves, and it was a name on a wall, and it was almost all referrals or through insurance.
Yep.
So here you come along and go, I want to change it. I'm going to put a name on my practice.
Yes. And I'm going to put a face to the name. Yes, absolutely.
That's extraordinary.
Yes, because there's no shame behind it. The same way we go to the doctor, we go to the dentist, we go to all sorts of doctors. Why not have a mental health person? Why not have someone that you're talking to in a non-biased way about maybe life and can give you some resources? Everyone wants one of those.
Simone Stiles, is that her name?
Simone Biles?
Yeah, so she said, hey, listen, I'm a little disoriented right now. I need to take some time off. Yes. Good for her.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Just like I get a lot of clients that will come to me who are college students and they'll take like a break, a year off from school before going into their graduate. I love that for them. Good job. Yes. Yeah. Don't do the back to back. Give yourself a moment when you need it. I'm all about that. I feel like that's how if more people did that, we would have less crazy drivers in Miami.
So here we were about a couple of years out of the pandemic, and we recognize there's still some people that are a little cautious. Now, we put in a lot of events, so we have a lot of people that are together. And each time we do that, we wonder, is there going to be an outbreak? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? How are people responding to this? And I would say 98% of that stuff never happened.
Yep.
It was just like, okay. And we seem to be getting a little bit more used to it, but it doesn't take away the trauma that we all went through.
Yes, because we all went through the pandemic differently. It affected all of us very differently. Some of us lost all of our family members. Some of our family members got very ill, lost our job, moved. So it had so many different effects. So when you're thinking of, is this going to cause an outbreak? You're really thinking of all of the things you experienced from the outbreak, not really just the moment that you got ill. So it's more of that you're focusing on. And that's the fear, right? The fear of this happening. So the best thing to do is what you guys are doing, continuing having events, continuing showing yourself that 89% of the time we're good, and that will help.
So in my personal experience, when I would go home, I would take off my clothes, jump in the pool. We did that for a long time. And then I got a little more comfortable. So I had somebody come over, give me a pedicure here. I went home. My wife locked me out of the house.
Yeah. Yes, it was very, very different for everyone.
And she said, you have to stay away. And it's like, and then you realize, just because I was comfortable or uncomfortable doesn't mean that somebody else is that same way.
Exactly. And that's what's happening a lot in the family. So you'll get the younger generation that was still hanging out with their friends, but then you got the older generation, grandma and grandpas that are staying away from everyone, but then they're interacting with the younger ones when they come in the home. So it's almost like, yes, you're safe, but I'm not safe, but it still affects me. So it was more of those communication that wasn't happening. It was more of like, okay, are we as a family not going to see anyone, or are we going to see certain people? That's how I helped during the pandemic a lot with families. It was trying to understand what were the boundaries that they were okay with versus boundaries that they weren't, because I noticed a lot of that. I had a husband that was sleeping in the garage for a couple of days because of an outing that he went to because of lack of communication. If there was a bit more, that would have been different.
So you seem to be a very calm person.
Yes, I am.
When did you discover that about yourself?
That's just who I am. I don't like to argue. I prefer to talk things out. I prefer to get a better understanding. That's just who I am. I'm definitely a flight. I'm running away. I don't want to argue or because I feel like arguments just cause bigger ripples, right? So it's already an issue. We already have a disagreement, and now I'm going to argue and say things that just make it a deeper hole that now I have to fix if I want to maintain my relationship with you. And I feel like that's too much work.
And I noticed that you were a certified mediator.
Yes, I'm a certified mediator and also an EMDR clinician.
What is that?
EMDR helps with trauma that people have experienced. It uses eye movement that are connected to our neurons in our brains that help us to go through trauma a lot quicker. So a session of EMDR is like 5 hours of talk therapy. So it kind of cuts through a lot quicker.
So people have vertigo, right? I'll tell you what, when you have one of those episodes and those eyeballs are jumping around in your head, it is disruptive.
It is disruptive, very much so. Very much so. So during those moments, it's best follow what the doctor says, of course, sit, don't move around too much,
And one of the things I learned was focus on something. Don't have your eyes closed.
Yep.
So you're sending a message to the brain.
Yes, that this is what we're focusing on.
And what role does a hearing loss play in relationships with families?
Hearing loss, it plays a role in the miscommunication, lack of communication and loss of tone. A lot of times when someone has hearing loss, they don't hear their tone the way family hears their tone. So a lot of miscommunication happens because they are reacting to the tone and not what was said. And the person that said it is looking at them like, I didn't say anything bad. I was just telling you to take out the trash, So it just interferes with that. So just a lot of just re-clarifying and going over, no, this is what I meant, or was that loud, or just clarification needs to be done more.
So let's talk about the trauma to the family,
Yes.
or the joy when the kiddies go off to college.
Yes.
I'm sure you've had plenty of those experiences.
Yes, I have.
So if you could explain how the different family members go through different things.
Okay, so the parents go through the guilt of we're happy that they're going off, but we're sad that they're staying, right? So we want to be happy and throw a party, but then we may want to cry and not really talk about it. Then you have the siblings. The siblings are going through excitement because they're happy for their sibling, but then they feel alone. They feel like they're about to lose that connection. So there's like this underlying sadness that usually is lingering around. And even the person that's leaving is sad, but that's the one that's never talked about. It's always talked about, oh, we're planning, we're doing, and no one talks about the sadness. So that's the dynamic that I see. It's just everyone's happy and very looking forward to the future, but then still very nervous of what could happen while you're not being here.
Well, NAMI is having a film presentation in a couple of weeks at the Dennis Moss Center down south, and one of Michelle's former classmates submitted a 10-minute short movie at their panel together, and it's called Unnested.
Unnested, okay.
And it talks about that trauma that occurs, and everybody responds differently.
Yes, it is.
And let's also talk about when children get married. How do we respond as human beings?
That's a little bit different, that trauma, because it's not registered the same when they get married. It's not registered as trauma. It's just a continuous of there's still the idea of we're going to see each other. We're still going to hang out. Holidays are still going to be the same. It's more focusing on, oh, yay, there's additional person, right? So that's more of the focus. Whereas going off to college, there's this sense of you might not come back home. You might decide to stay and live and have a family there. And if that's far from home, what does that mean for us? So it creates a bit of more of a sadness going off to college than getting married, depending on the dynamic of the family, of course.
So you mentioned that you were from Haiti.
Yes.
Right.
My family.
All right. Your family is from Haiti. Where were you born?
I was born here, Jackson.
Okay. So your folks are here?
Yes. Mom and dad.
I'm sorry?
Yep. My mom and my dad. Yeah.
Okay. That's wonderful. And congratulations on being successful. I know that those things are very important.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And we know that the little kids are always watching all of us.
Yes.
So tell me about some of the little kids that you're around that are looking at their aunt or.
Yeah, so I get my nieces and nephews, of course, they all call me for advice, and their parents call me, for advice when they're not too sure what to do with them. So they look at me and I try to tell them that I'm normal, that I'm human. I go through problems the same, even though I'm a therapist and I work primarily with couples and individuals. I'm in a marriage. We go through things all the time, my husband and I. So I'm normal. And you can get it. The same way I was able to find people to help me along the way, you can too. So my nieces and nephew, I always push them to check with their resources at school, to make sure that when they go to college that they're volunteering, they're being part of organizations that can kind of keep them on track, because it is difficult when you come from, your family is an immigrant family that maybe they didn't attend college and you're the first to go, and you're trying to do something. No, I was not, thankfully. But when you're trying to do something that's different, I am the first doctor, so it is a bit different, but my family was more into the medical field. We have nurses, CNAs, so they understood.
Should I say, of course?
Yes, of course.
So we have about a minute left, and what I'd like you to do in the moment, Michelle's going to put the camera directly on you, and what I'd like you to do, if you're so inclined, is to look in the camera and think about those people that have helped you along your way. And if they're appropriate to thank them, you want to call them by their name, that would be fine. And whether they're with us or not, this might be your opportunity, because some little kid is watching you.
I know.
And wondering. So why don't you go ahead? There we go. Look right in that camera there.
I would like to start with all my students that I've taught throughout the years. Thank you for always giving me the patience as your teacher, because I know you guys thought that I was in school and also teaching you, and you were always there for me. You were always so kind. My family, my husband, my kids, my mom, my aunt, grandparents, please, thank you. And to all of you, just for being part of my journey, always believing in me, always watching the boys when I needed, if I needed to take an extra class. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the food, because without you, I wouldn't be able to make it this far.
Wonderful. Dominique, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The kids are watching all the time. We're going to look right over that red camera. And folks, remember, thank you for spending time with us, and take care of your family and yourself. Have a good day.